What's up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. I'm your host, Ricky Varandas. Today we have an awesome guest, Colonel Lieutenant Anthony Shaffer, also author of the book Operation Dark Heart. He's done interviews on a bunch of shows. He's been on mainstream media shows. He's been on alternative media shows. So you might know him. You might know his name or his face. And he also wrote the book Operation Dark Heart, which is about the Able Danger operation, which we didn't get into too much today. Well, actually, we didn't get in it at all because we talked about so many other things, and I didn't want to stop the conversation from flowing. So we had a blast talking about foreign policy, about personal life experiences and philosophies, talking about current events, talking about cigars and vacations. We talked about a bunch of stuff. So a really informative and fun conversation. We talked about different perspectives and opinions on taxing and the government's role in that. And so it was just a really fun conversation. I know I always say I'm going to keep these intros short, and I never do. So this time I'm actually going to keep this intro short. So if you guys like the show, please retweet it, share it, post it wherever. All my shows are open source. So if you guys want to share it somewhere or post it, upload it somewhere, feel free. You know, it's much more important to me to just get the show out there and get the information out there and get these, what I find interesting conversations out there, than it is to try to have monopoly on making sure only I have the content. So please do that. Also rate the show. Go on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you listen to the podcast. You can go on iTunes and just give us a 5-star rating if you like the show. If you don't, then please don't rate the show. I'm kidding. But whatever rating you think we deserve, then give us. And I really appreciate anybody who goes out of their way to rate the show and leave a comment or whatever, because apparently that helps with people finding the show. So thanks again, guys. Also on our YouTube channel, RV36, or you can just search the Ripple Effect Podcast on YouTube, and you'll find our YouTube channel, and you can find all the episodes on there. And then in the show descriptions, you'll have links to all our guests' work, their books, their documentaries, whatever they might have will be easily found in the show description with the link. So I'll do that. And also you can find the Theory 6 Music Project, which is a great way of supporting the show. I'll have, in the show description, in all our show descriptions, there's links to the Theory 6 Music Project, which you can find anywhere you can find digital downloads. Also, all the music you hear on this show is Theory 6 music. So if you like it, if you like the intro song, and you want to purchase it and help support the show, please do. And also, I'm going to very soon set up a Patreon account where people can support the show and donate whatever they want to donate. So, and of course, money's tight, times are tough. So if you can't, don't worry about it. Just enjoy the show and don't worry about it. But if you can, it'd be very much appreciated. Of course, the end goal would be awesome if eventually I could do this full time. This would be my goal. If I could make less money than I'm making now, but yet be able to do this full time and just kind of, pay the bills, then I'd be completely happy. I think there's a lot of listeners out there that would take a much more fulfilling job than one that's maybe you're making more money but less fulfilling, just because you can't really quantify happiness, and I think that's a really important aspect of life. People will be much happier doing something they enjoy than doing something that makes them more money. And but anyways, back to the show. Anthony Shaffer, great conversation, and enjoy. Tony.
Hey, how are you?
Not bad. Thanks for being with me. I appreciate it.
Sure. How's everything going?
Good. Can't complain. You?
Oh, busy as heck as always, trying to sort through my day.
Yeah, that's not a bad thing, right?
Yeah. Well, it's good. It's good to have a day to sort through. So.
Yeah. It's that's definitely true. It's funny how when you're not busy, or you would think that you would enjoy a day where you're not busy and you got time to catch up on stuff. It's hard to balance everything out because even for myself, like sometimes I'm like super busy and then I'm like, I need a day to just relax. And then I finally get a day to relax. And I'm like, well, now I got time to sort things out or do things I didn't want to do. So it's like you never end up relaxing.
Well, as for me, it's like I never seem to actually have some time I can actually completely break away from everything. But it's always, always a nice thought anyway. So
yeah, well, you don't go on any like weekend getaways or any small vacations. I mean, you do always seem to be doing something. Your name or your you end up popping up on some news show or doing some interview. And,
well, that's the thing. I mean, generally, like I went to England 3 weeks ago now, and I had one down day. I had Sunday kind of off, and then I had to, I flew over on a Saturday, had Sunday off, and then worked Monday and flew back Tuesday. So it's not like I get a lot of time off. And like I'm in New York, going up Sunday for meetings on Monday in New York, and I'll be literally have zero downtime. So it's just, it's just the way things work, and I kind of come to accept it. So.
Yeah, I guess, there's definitely, it's funny how we always assume that we would enjoy, like, just relaxing and having less, but, I mean, some people like yourself, I'm sure, you need to keep busy, right? You need to constantly keep doing something. If not, you feel like you're not being productive, because, like, even myself...
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I try to, I'll be going over to England again the third week of November, and I've got, I think... Of the week, I think I've got 2 down days, but they're really not down because I'll be actually doing some other media and stuff while I'm there, and then meeting with the British MOD on that Friday before I leave. So it's really kind of like, I'll be seeing the sights, but I'll be still doing stuff at the same time. So
yeah, it's not really a vacation where you get to kind of just plan on relaxing the whole time and having a couple of drinks. Right. And yeah. I mean, it is nice. I know you spent some time in Portugal too, right? Because I think I
went to high school there. Yes.
Yeah, that's. I was born in Portugal. I was born in Chaves.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was born in Chaves up north. And
very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in Cascais and Estoril, and then the school was actually in Carnaxide up close to Lisbon. So yeah, no, I spent 76 to 80 there. So yeah.
Damn, tu fala português bocadinho?
Un pouco. It's terrible. I mean, I have not used it since 1985. So
yeah, that's kind of that's when I was born. But that's definitely one of the things I worry about, because it's so nice to know multiple languages. Like yourself, you do a lot of traveling, and as a kid, we'd go back to Portugal every other year, and we'd be there for a month or a month and a half, and you meet people, and everybody there knows multiple languages. They know your language, they know their language, and they know another 1 or 2 languages. And you come to America, and it's like, oh, learn our language, and it's like, it's funny because it's like, well, if you leave the country, you realize like everybody knows multiple languages.
Right.
It's quite unusual to go to Europe and meet somebody who only knows their native tongue. So, and I think it's good because you connect with people differently when you can speak their native tongue. They immediately open up to you,
except the French.
It's funny. I have we have a family-owned construction company, and I have this guy that works for me, good friend of ours, who's been working for us for a long time, and he was in the Legion. He was in the French Foreign Legion because he's Portuguese. Went to France. A lot of people at that time was going to Portugal and was going to Switzerland, and a lot of, like, my parents worked in Switzerland for years because Portugal's economy was doing very good, so people were kind of migrating east to look for work, and he spent most of his life in France, and he's like, France would be an amazing country if you just remove the people. and I'm always like, really, what is it about France that people have? I'm guessing have you spent some time there?
No, I spent some time with the French military. I mean, and they're pretty cool. I mean, compared to the French people. I mean, the military, I think,
compared to the French people.
But the people, I haven't spent so much time there with them. So
yeah, but it's funny how, like, during the Iraq War, how they got the freedom fries thing, and they got the reputation of being like wusses and stuff like that. And I'm like, have you looked at French history? I'm like, they're actually quite brutal. I mean, there's a reason.
Oh, no. Well, it's kind of funny. My friend Walter Jones, Congressman Jones, came up with the freedom fry thing, by the way.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, no, but I agree with you. I mean, they are, I've worked with them in combat, and they're very effective. And the stuff they've been doing in Africa, North Africa, has been very effective. They are very brutal when they have to be. But the problem is the politics. I don't think the French government is actually on top of the threat as much as it could be. I mean, it's like we had the same problem. We have we have the capability to do a lot more than we are, but the policy holds us back. So I think that's one of the big issues I deal with on a daily basis.
And what do you mean by that? Like, you think that policy in regards to what? Like, what type of policy do you think holds us back?
Well, I mean, I'll give you the primary macro example, ISIS. I've been in with senior Pentagon officials multiple times, and the one thing they've sought and have been refused is global authority to pursue ISIS. That is to say that look at ISIS as a global threat. The White House will not give them the authority to do that. Therefore, we do have the capability to approach it much more aggressively, to go after it in places we think it's going. But because of the policy restrictions, we can't get there ahead of it or do all the things we believe we should as the military to hamper its ability to conduct operations. So it becomes not a capabilities issue, not an intelligence issue. It becomes a policy issue because the intelligence is there saying this is what's going to go. We have the capability to go do something about it, but we can't because of the policy. And I think the French are very similarly attuned to that. I think the French military is a lot more capable than what I think they're allowed to do a lot of the time. So,
but do you think, and ISIS is a good example of it. Do you think that they actually want to end the threat? I mean, sometimes it makes you wonder, because you look at obviously what happened in Benghazi, and you spoke about it in many other interviews and stuff like that. And
right.
And a lot of people believe that they're funneling weapons to what in quotations moderate rebels, whatever the hell that means. And it's funny how these terms will just pick up on media. Like, people will just repeat them and nobody ever stops and thinks about what they're saying. Like, what the fuck is a moderate rebel? And how do you...
I'm with you. No, there's no such thing as a moderate Islamic rebel. I've said this in interviews. Like, there's no such thing. It's completely impossible. You cannot have a moderate Islamic radical. It's not. It just does not exist.
And how would you even how would you even decide that they're moderate anyways? That's the other silly thing. It's like, do you have a multiple choice questionnaire? It's like, how do you come up to that conclusion? And yet the public
it's a definition based on convenience for politicians. It's much of what they do. It's all about what they think they can sell regarding the image, not the reality. So, as we've seen in Afghanistan, one of the grand irony there is the Haqqani network, which we helped fund and put together back during the Cold War against the Soviets, became one of the most lethal fighting forces against us when we were there. So it's kind of like, there's no such thing as a moderate. The Haqqani network, I'll grant you, is more of a criminal enterprise than a terror network. With that said, their job is they use terror as a method of their implementation of policy on behalf of the Pakistanis. So it's just kind of like we don't tend to think the next step through. One of my friends and mentors, Tony Zinni, General Zinni once said that he often would get asked by President Clinton, Bill Clinton, about a specific capability or operation. He would be called into the White House and he would be asked a question: can we do this? Can we do this militarily? Could we do it this way? And the answer would inevitably, yeah, we can do it that way, but then what? What happens next? And I think this is what the problem is with politicians, especially with the current group, is that they clearly want to have action. They want to do something, but they are checker players in a game of chess. And by making a tactical move that seems important, they've blown 5 other moves on the chessboard. So this is where I fault them from not thinking it through. And again,
do you think that's for political reasons?
I don't cast it openly. I spend a lot of time behind the scenes talking about the chess game with folks who are actually in leadership positions. So,
do you think that the reason why they constantly just like you said, and you make a really good point, because just thinking about it while you were saying it, that absolutely seems like what they do. They try to make a move immediately for the public to get the impression that, hey, we're doing something. Right. And then they don't think in advance. I mean, the Gaddafi thing was a perfect example. And
absolutely.
The country's a mess, and we didn't think like, well, now what? What are we going to do after we take down Gaddafi? Or after we kill him?
Well, some of us did. So there's an interview that's still available on Fox News where I'm sitting next to Ambassador Ali Oujale, who was the Libyan ambassador, and it was with my friend Uma Pinjaraba, the Fox News broadcaster, and this was the first day of the no-fly zone. And Ambassador Oujale is glowing about, this is going to bring democracy and yada, yada, yada. And I basically had to politely say, no, not remotely. This is going to do everything to balkanize the Libyans. We're going to see a revision to tribalism. All those things that Gaddafi kept held down are now going to pop up. And I said it. So, and some of us were saying during that period, by the way, this is not going to be a panacea of democracy. There, you have to have a certain level of cultural maturity for a democracy to take and maintain itself. They didn't have that critical mass. They had no tradition of democracy. So therefore, you're literally asking someone who is like a, and I don't mean to be pejorative about this, but it's like saying you're taking an Alaskan husky and asking them all of a sudden to be a circus dog. It's like, it's not going to happen. There's no, a husky may be a very intelligent animal, does a lot of great things, but it can't instantly start doing tricks in a circus simply because it's intelligent. So I think this is where we have to understand there's a limitation of expectation regarding the social fabric of any nation. And to have politicians like Hillary Clinton and Bill and Barack Obama ignore the warnings of experts who were legitimately saying this is not what you think it is really akin to I'd say, they always claim to be the smartest people in the room, and they ain't. So this is a great indicator of that. So
yeah, I think they capitalize on the fact that the American public has incredibly bad long-term memory, because it seems like we will make the same mistake soon after. We went to Iraq. Obviously what happened in Iraq was, I call it our Vietnam. It was a similar kind of thing. And then soon after, we're talking about Syria. We're talking about Libya, and we're kind of doing the same thing. And it's like, what's wrong with these people that either one or two things? And this is the thing is and then you get in these conversations with friends and family, and you talk about these issues, and you think about well, is it that one, they really aren't the smartest person in the room, like you said, or two, do they know that it's going to turn out bad eventually anyways, but this keeps the military-industrial complex going, and this keeps justifying a reason to get involved in the Middle East or in countries that have resources? Which one do you think it is?
Well, I think it's a bit of both, and I think they're just stupid, to be honest with you. I mean, not to put too far. Some of these people they may be great politicians, they may know how to get elected, but they don't understand foreign policy, they don't understand history, and so then on top of that, then you have, and if you've noticed, all the neocons who really got us into Iraq are the ones supporting Hillary Clinton. They're the ones signing up saying, hey, we got to, and she really is, I think, deep down a hawk. I got a question the other day. I was at a certain embassy, which will remain nameless, but I think it was on my Instagram, and I got a question while I was there about what do I see happening if Hillary Clinton gets elected? Will it be different than the Obama administration? Yeah, absolutely. I think that she'll bring in a lot of the old Clinton folks, and I think a lot of the old neocons who were President Bush 43 supporters will end up doing things as well, which goes to your point about the military-industrial complex. I think often these folks will both create a crisis for them. It's Munchausen by proxy. The idea here is you have a parent who makes a child sick just to show that he can be the hero. I think it's the same thing at the national level, at the international level, where they will create a crisis and say, we're here now to solve it. And so it's really convenient by the fact, and by the way, this is the way the Saudis work as well. Oh, the Saudis fund Wahhabism, and then they want to help us, come in and rescue folks from the effects of ISIS. So it's kind of you've helped create it. So I think there's a tendency for certain folks, certain politicians, certain nations to play this game where they create the crisis, and then they want to be the ones to come in and rescue. It's kind of the old proverbial self-licking ice cream cone. So. Oh,
absolutely. I mean, she gets foreign policy advice from Henry Kissinger, who's a war criminal. And, doesn't that tell you something? It's amazing how the media and people get so blinded so easily. I've gotten in more debates with people, and not even trying to. It's just, if you say something bad about Trump, they immediately think you're supporting Hillary. If you say something bad about Hillary, especially, and I think the Hillary supporters are even worse, because there's so much bad to say about Hillary that and people will just justify it by saying, well, Trump is this. And I'm like, so what you're doing, you're ignoring the facts and then just deflecting the attention on Trump. And don't get me wrong, Trump is, obviously not intelligent at all. And he's
got flaws. No,
he absolutely has flaws. He says stupid shit. But in his defense, I guess I will say that when he was saying stupid shit, he also didn't know he was going to be running for president years later. So, you know, when you're a lifelong politician like Hillary, you're probably much more thought out with what you say publicly, you know, which I think people have to take in consideration a little bit. But either way, yeah, absolutely, he's flawed. He's made some very corrupt and selfish and business moves with his.
He's
Trump.
a businessman. I mean, that's what they do. They do things. So and he's talked about how he bribes politicians. He basically says, "Yeah, I pay him off." I mean, he said that. So but I do find the fact that he's clear about the fact that there's corruption, and he's I don't want to say he's above it, but I think he's honest about his existence. He says, "Yeah, like I've bought politicians. I pay these guys. They come back beg me for money," and they do. So my problem with the process of Hillary is that I've seen 3 fatal flaws in the way things have been revealed about her. First, foremost, for you follow me on Twitter and others do, the pay to play. I have tweeted the same tweet with 5 different articles with the title "Pay to Play" over the past week, and they've all been different aspects of the same thing: how she used her office to enrich herself. And I've used this analogy before. As an operative, as a highly trained intelligence operative, if I decided to go rogue and start charging people on the side for me to do what I did for the government, basically using my government office, all the training, all the access I had that was given to me when I worked as a defense operative undercover, if I then decided to freelance, I would be in jail. I could not use my training, my office, to say, "Hey, I'm really a DOD secret operative over here. Let me see if I can help you do something in your business." That's illegal. I can't do that. So that's the first fatal flaw. Second fatal flaw, in my judgment, is, as you pointed out, Libya. All these other things which I've seen that she's done on the record, Benghazi, some of the things which happened behind the scenes regarding Syria. To me, that judgment is bad. It's all bad. And so when you combine that with the idea of giving her literally the keys to the kingdom, I can only imagine what might happen. And I've talked to my friends on the left. I actually spend a lot of time with my friends on the left, more than I publicly admit. We have good discussions, good dialogue. And a couple of them privately have told me that they feel that it is much more likely that Hillary Clinton will get us into a war than Donald Trump. So that's the second fatal flaw in my judgment. Third, I think that by the fact that she has shown herself to be a deft politician, I don't think she's in the greatest health. So I'm sorry. A lot of friends of mine think I'm a conspiracy theorist because I think there's something wrong with Hillary. I think there's something wrong with Hillary. And I think that if you have problems with your eyes when you're in the middle of press conferences, that indicates to me that there's some health problems there that go beyond your ability to control or mitigate. So I think those 3 things are sufficient for me to say, as much as Donald Trump is a flawed candidate, you got to look seriously at these other issues, which I think do play on what would be critical to a new president to be able to have. So that's my view on the Hillary issue.
Well, yeah. Well, you have to assume that all the traveling she's done, all the press conferences, all that stuff. I mean, anybody at that age would have a hard time with energy, just keeping your energy levels high.
Absolutely.
And that's not, a bash towards Hillary. That's a bash. I mean, that's just hard for anybody.
Anybody.
So if she has any medical issue, or if she's not, 100% healthy, it can completely be a issue with, keeping her energy up, being sharp all the time. And one thing, she does seem like she's sharp often, and which is weird to me, because I'm like, I know you're doing all these press conferences, you're traveling, you get jet lag. I mean, are they got some alpha brain pill that they're giving her that is helping her? It's because you hear about, Hitler and JFK and Nixon, people were on prescription drugs, people were taking stuff. So it makes you wonder, like, what is she taking? How do they keep her energy up? How does she stay so awake and aware? So
it's Scooby Snacks.
Is that what it is? But yeah, it's interesting. But it's amazing how people. It's almost like, it reminds me of when Bush ran. Like, I feel like Obama won because people hated Bush so much that they weren't voting for Obama. They're voting against Bush. they wanted somebody so different than Bush that Obama was that difference, And I almost feel like this election, nobody's voting for who they want. They're voting for against who they don't want. And I think that's such an awful way of voting. I mean, you hear interviews with Ralph Nader, who, is one who knows all about this, because when he ran the second time, he got shit for, why are you running? You shouldn't. And he says this, you should vote for who you want to win.
Right. I like Ralph, and I are friends, and I respect his opinion. And I think that's the issue right now. Is I think it's kind of a vote for hold your nose and vote for the candidate least of least stinkiness. So it's a tough choice. It really is.
And don't you think that kind of just keeps the recurring theme of, okay, every election we're just gonna be, throw our hands up and be like, our options suck, but I'll just pick the worst of two evils. And every election we'll just keep doing that. Like, don't you think eventually we need to be, and that's where I think Bernie supporters and Trump supporters, even though they were very different, with certain things, but the one thing we all had in common, I say we, not me, we, but they had in common, was the fact that they all understood that the system's corrupt and we need somebody radically different, and that's the only way we're ever going to really.
Well, I think that's your point. That's the key point you just made. Is like, yes, I think the system is so corrupt, people have finally gotten fed up. I think Barack Obama ran on the theme of basically bringing Washington together and going against the system. Well, instead of going against the system, he absorbed the system into his own psyche and made it part of him. So I think a lot of folks, look, I had Republican friends who voted for Obama thinking that he was going to be changing the way business was done. He didn't. He just rolled in and made business even worse. So I think you amalgamate that over time, and I think that's why you see the big extremes here, because a lot of the Republican candidates, for better or for worse, are seen as establishment. And I think Jeb Bush was the first one. Let's remember, he started out with a huge amount of money, and yet he was one of the first ones to get flamed out because of this backlash in the conservative side against the establishment. And he was seen as the ultimate establishment candidate. So Jeb Bush, was kind of calcified early by the fact of the momentum of folks being fed up. Bernie, I think, had a lot of support, and I think Bernie would have come out a lot better had the DNC not having put their finger on the scale for Hillary. I do believe that, and I believe WikiLeaks has made that very clear that it was Hillary and the DNC versus Bernie. It was not a fair fight. And I understand, I have a lot of millennials I talk to and deal with, and there's a great deal of frustration there. And I think they feel there's nowhere to turn to. And frankly, I don't know if there is. I think you would have better candidates if there was not such an extreme feeling regarding how things are out of sync. Because I do believe, and I don't think anybody would dispute me on this, Hillary Clinton represents the establishment. She does. That's why you see all the rhinos and neocons from the Republican Party going over to her. And at the same time, I think we see a lot of issues relating to who funds her, why they fund her, Wall Street. I mean, how can you be a Wall Street reform? Elizabeth Warren, for goodness sake, endorsing Hillary, saying that she's going to be the guardian of the consumers. Are you kidding me? I mean, what planet did you wake up on? So it's all this doublespeak that indicates to me that the Democrats have no interest in actually fixing things. It's all about maintaining the momentum of the establishment. And even Elizabeth Warren, and even now Bernie Sanders, with his extra mansion that he bought recently, have all signed aboard with Team Hillary. So it's really, the only hope you have is this very flawed candidate named Donald Trump, who will, I think, be a wrecking ball. And I think a lot of people on the establishment side are very worried about that. So.
Yeah, I and I've had Roger Stone on, multiple times, and he's he's obviously a Trump supporter, but and the thing is, like, people will, I'll get fans or listeners, email me and be like, hey, he has a lot of good information, but he's so biased, and I always tell people, I'm like, listen, only because just because somebody has a opinion that you don't agree on one thing doesn't mean you ignore the fact. So if somebody on the right, because sometimes I'll get this where I'll share like yourself, I'll share a pay to play story, and then somebody will be like, oh, look who wrote it, and I'm like, well, does that mean that it's untrue?
Right.
And the way I look at it is that if the left exposes some corruption on the right because of their, maybe not for moral reasons, but just because they want to expose the right, but it's true, then that's good. And same thing if the right exposes some things on the left, and even if it's not for moral reasons, maybe it's just to make their candidate look better, then it doesn't matter. We have to look at the facts and stop looking at who's saying it. If it's what we should be looking at, is it true? Is there some evidence? Is there some proof to back it? And if that's the case, stop starting. Of course, there's the people who are going to be talking about how corrupt Hillary is. Most of them are going to be Trump supporters or people on the right. That's just common sense. But does that mean everything they say is untrue or is only for the purpose of making Hillary look bad? I mean, it's a very flawed logic, and people fall into this propaganda of just thinking that it must be untrue because it's the right, but you have to look at the evidence. The WikiLeaks thing is perfect because it doesn't matter how many articles people share. It seems like Hillary supporters are so brainwashed that they just ignore it, and then they start talking about the Russian thing, or like that matters. Like even if there was proof that Putin was directly involved with, does it change like the facts and the evidence that came out with the WikiLeaks emails?
No. I mean, I'm with you on it. I mean, look, I'll tweet Rachel Maddow tweets when I think she's correct on something. And some of your audience may know, I've gone on with Lawrence O'Donnell on MSNBC at night when I think there's an issue. Even Brian Williams and I were together on one issue at one point in time. So I don't think you can actually judge a book by its cover constantly. You have to open the book and read it, because you'll find that there are factual elements that need to be examined. And this is where a lot of folks who follow me get upset when I tweet something that's from the left. It's like, fundamentally, is it correct? Okay, you may not like the source. I'm not the biggest fan of MSNBC, but there are things that they do. They are willing to say that the conservatives will not, even though it's a valid criticism. That's one of the reasons I've actually been going to the UK Daily Mail. I think they go at both sides with equal vigor on certain things. So it's kind of like I often look to the international press, who, by the way, seems to cover a lot more I would say, inconvenient issues regarding the United States than our own media now, because even the New York Times and Washington Post are reluctant to cover certain things that I think should be talked about. So I think the international press actually is a valid place for stories regarding our own problems.
Yeah, it seems like people overseas almost know what's going on and better informed than the American public. And I think you go, like you said, you look at, look at RT America, and people will say, oh, that's Russian propaganda. I'm like, they have freaking Tom Hartman on there. I mean, the biggest progressive, he's been a progressive for forever, and very hardcore progressive. Like, so obviously they're not just trying to sell you a Trump propaganda. So, and they've had Abby Martin on, who is, very, very well known for not giving a shit about either one. And so it's one of those.
I know Army, and I know I used to be on with Alona when she had her own show there, which was went against both sides. I really enjoyed before she left to go to HuffPost Live. So yeah.
Yeah, so it's just one of those things where it's people just don't do the research. And you were in a good documentary that was called State of Mind, Psychology of Control. Till this day, still one of my favorite documentaries. Richard Grove actually is going to hopefully be on in the next month or so. And I've had people on from Free Mind Films who did the film on, and that film is so important. I've recommended it to so many people because I think people need to see the throughout history how those in power have always used propaganda and techniques of swaying public opinion and getting people to go a certain way or beliefs. Because the thing is that, democracy works if we have the right information. Now, if we don't have the right information, then we're making choices based on false information. And if they're controlling the information we're getting, then they can kind of sway opinions any way they want. So I think that, and it shows, throughout history, Caesar and the Roman times, like they've always had techniques and ways of controlling the public. And today is no different. And the media is a perfect example of it because, I mean, CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, I mean, they really don't talk about any of the crucial issues going on in the world. They'll just regurgitate whatever the Hillary campaign says. They'll talk about is Russian involved in the email hacks, but they don't talk about what's in the emails. They don't talk about, they'll show that video of Trump talking about grabbing a pussy, which is actually a hilarious line. And
I know I find humor in it every time I hear it. Unfortunately, other people don't share my sense of humor. Apparently, but
I thought it was. I'm like, who would ever even think of that? I'm like, that's one of the funniest lines I've ever heard. And people who say, oh, that's not locker. Listen, I've heard much worse. You get guys.
I've heard way worse.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean and that's the thing is, you get all these like, no offense, like politicians, but actually, if you take offense, I don't care. But if like a lot of these guys are like political nerds, they were in politics their whole lives. They weren't jocks. They weren't guys who, I played in a metal band. I played basketball, played soccer. I mean, I've been around a lot of just, I work in construction. I've been around a lot of guys who are kind of blue collar guys. And and you hear jokes like that. You hear people just say, and a lot of times you say it just to get a rise out of your friends and because it's funny more than you actually mean that you did it,
Well, look, I've been invited to stag events, which go way farther than simply talking about nonsense. So I am not offended, and frankly, I think the left understands that there's far worse stuff that's on their side that has not been fully talked about by our side. That could be coming. And I'm sorry, Bill Clinton does come to mind. I mean, it's just one of those things where I do believe that he's engaged in some things which other people would be put in jail for if they had engaged in them. It's just that simple. So
I mean, you go all the way back to like him doing, him and his links to the Meadow, Arkansas, and Barry Seal and the drug trafficking, and his brother being known for throwing these coke parties and stuff like that.
Right.
And then you look at all the allegations of women and you can't. I mean, if you're gonna assume that the Trump accusations, which coincidentally came out during the debate time and during the election time, so all these years later, and I'm not saying they're lying. All I'm saying is that I think it's not coincidental that because that's another thing that nobody's talking about. Why did this video with Billy Bush only come out now, and why and so. And then why are these rape accusations only come out now? So I think what people have to ask is, okay, the person who's running a campaign, who's willing to have, throw these low blows and do anything at any cost to win, what does that tell you about her judgment? What does that tell you about her moral compass? What does that tell you about her in general, where she will do I mean, look what she did to Bernie Sanders, like you said, which is, it's amazing that people on the left will still say, oh, Hillary's better than Trump, this and that. It's like, she didn't just screw, somebody on the right. She screwed somebody on your side. She so she's willing to even step over people on your team to get ahead. So what does that tell you about her character? And I think that's what people aren't taking consideration. Clinton's accusations came out a long time ago. They didn't all come out at once, so it makes you think, okay, so they weren't exposed, maybe some of them, but not all of them were coming out for political reasons or because of political pressure for people wanting to take down Bill. Where this one was quite obviously, because of the timing made it quite obvious that it had something to do. It was politically motivated. It had, so I nobody's asking those questions, and people just kind of brush it aside. And Hillary's done such a great job of constantly saying the same thing, avoiding questions. I mean, the thing she says, about having a public opinion and a private opinion, I mean, people just brush that off like it's no big deal. I'm like, she's telling you that she will tell you what she needs to tell you just to get elected. I mean, you can go on YouTube and you can find 13, 14, 15-minute videos of just clips after clip of her saying two different things in two different press conferences, two different interviews, and it's not tampered. It's not, it's her. You're exposing her. So I mean, I say this all the time. I'm like, she is the Underwoods. I mean, the Clintons are, the Underwoods from House of Cards. I mean,
oh, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean,
I wouldn't be surprised if some of that Kevin Spacey as the executive producer wasn't thinking along that line, since I think he knows him personally. So, no, I agree with you, and I think this is where the American public needs to wake up. I'm with you. I try to watch everything closely. And honestly, I'll say this for you and your audience: like, look, if I really sincerely believed that Hillary Clinton was going to be the best choice for the nation, I would say, maybe it's time we set aside the criticism of her. But with all the factual failures that she has to her name, the serial failures, and then you put on top of that this ability to lie serially, that indicates that you have a flawed personality that I think it's megalomaniacal. And to her, I believe it's all about power and the accumulation and use of power. Let me speak philosophically for a second. The idea that you would accumulate power for power's sake is completely insane. It is not rational. Most of us who I think come up through whatever system. You were born, in Lisbon or in Portugal. I was born in Missouri. Basically, there's a predisposition of us coming through a culture which teaches how to have integrity, how to do the right thing, how to be a good human being, to work with others. And while she writes books like It Takes a Village, it was really funny, when I was a captain at Fort Bragg going through a school, one of the female officers was talking about Hillary Clinton in glowing terms, and about how she's enlightened and wants to make things better for women and children. I said, really? And so it takes a village. It takes a village to raise a children. That means it's like a community, communism. It's all about consolidation of power. So what I took away from her book is that we can't be trusted as individuals to develop our own sense of what's right and wrong. We have to be told. And that's what I mean. I'm swinging this back around to her philosophy, I believe, of communism, of totalitarianism. So I believe that she sees things through this lens of, if I'm in charge, I can dictate how things can be. And this goes to other great leaders of that ilk, such as Mao, Stalin, Hitler, and some other notables. So this idea that somehow you will allow someone who, by the way, Hitler lied, Stalin lied, Mao, I think, was, his little red book wasn't all that truthful, I think, in the end, when he, liquidated all these millions of people in China. So we have to look at the arc of history to look at, how someone with this type of personality tends to function. And I do believe that, as much as we saw Barack Obama accumulate a lot of power, I think Hillary will be even worse regarding just issuing things from the White House without any regard to the Constitution or over restraint. And let's remember that our Constitution, our system of governance, the Republic, is based on checks and balances. The three elements of our government, the courts, the Congress, and the executive, they're supposed to have co-equal powers to try to check each other. And I just see people like her trying to overwhelm that to the point of where the oversight and counter force will not exist, will not function.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think as I get older, my views become more libertarian. This idea that
both.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that, and it's funny, there's so many people who hear the term and they relate some politician or somebody that they think is a libertarian to the ideas, and they're like, oh, that's crazy. I'm like, okay, well, let's just break down what they stand for. You get to do whatever the fuck you want, as long as you're not bothering somebody else from doing whatever the fuck they want. And I'm like, does that sound like a bad world to live in? It's like, I'm like, it doesn't sound like this concept's not bad. So this idea that, like you said, I think there's also something that those in power believe, that the majority, the average voter, the majority of people don't know what's best for them, so they have to decide for us. It's
right.
And most of our laws and stuff don't make any sense. And you look at Clinton, to go back, not to jump around too much because I'm very scatterbrained, as you can tell, but Clinton in the 90s, the welfare reform, the 3 strikes and you're out stuff. I mean, he didn't do anything for the minority community. I mean, he actually harmed them, and right. The signing of NAFTA, China and the WTO, the World Trading Organization, all these things, and a lot of these things didn't have effect when he was in office, and had, it became a bigger issue after he got out of office. I mean, before NAFTA and before China and the WTO, I mean, it was after that. It was only years after that you saw the effects of those decisions, and you start seeing factories shutting down. You start seeing us, factories in America trying to compete with factories in China, which is completely unrealistic and not possible. When a factory in China can pay somebody 10 cents a day, and a factory in America has, in most cases, unions, or they prevailing wage or minimum wage, they have paid time off, all this stuff. How are you going to compete with that? You can't. I mean, that's just common sense. Ross Perot paid out of his pocket to be on TV to explain this to the American public, which I tip my hat off to, because I mean, I thought it was awesome what he was doing. He was putting his money where his mouth was, and he really did care about getting this information out, and even if it meant spending his own money. And so it just, I think people, we look back at certain time periods and be like, oh, the Clinton times were good, the Clinton time, and it's like, well, do you really remember how they were, or do you really remember the decisions he made, which had maybe some long-term effects and didn't have some immediate effects? So I think, again, and this goes back to long-term memory, short-term memory. I just think that we have created a society where we are so busy, we are constantly, like yourself, we were talking about it in the beginning of the show, constantly doing stuff that people don't have time to research. People don't have time to remember what happened, So what ends up happening is that we move on with our lives, and nobody really is politically active or really cares about what's going on, what we're voting for, what laws are being passed, or whatever. And yet, I mean, I'm a cigar smoker. I'm
Me too.
Yeah, are you? Yeah. I've done a whole show on cigars with Delicia Cigar Fix, and she's a cigar reviewer and travels all over the world.
Very cool. If you follow me on Instagram, I often will take photos of some of the cigars I smoke. So that's cool.
I'm gonna. That's the one social media I haven't gotten involved in yet with Instagram. But I think it's always good to have one more social media to kind of expand your
absolutely,
your world. But what do you smoke? You got some preferences that?
Well, as a matter of fact, I do. I just have it right here. As a matter of fact, I've been big into the Drew Estates Natural.
Oh, the Natural. Yeah, those are. You don't find them a little sweet?
Actually, like these a lot. They're very good, and it's Natural Drew Estates. This is the English.
You don't find them a little sweet?
I like a little sweet. Yeah, I have some of the Drew Estates, other ones that I smoke, and then let's see, what else do I have? I had some other ones recently.
Yeah, the acids are really.
And
then they
Brick House has been pretty good.
Yeah, Brick House is good. Yeah, Brick House. I two of my favorite ones are the Hoyo Excaliburs and then the Dom Pepin Black Label. And it's funny because something about smoking cigars and having a whiskey or a bourbon, it's almost like my yoga. I think that I always say, I think yoga got popular because people are so busy, and this goes to what we're talking about. People are so busy that they don't find any time to kind of hit reset or to reflect or to think about their actions or what they're doing with their life. We just get caught up in this. So, I mean, the world's been designed this way, where you work your whole life to basically give most of your income to the government. They decide wherever they want to spend it. And if you don't give them their cut, then just like the mafia, they lock you up or kill you, And and then you cross your fingers that when you retire, you have some health left and some energy left to actually enjoy life. Like, this is the society we've built. And it's like, we don't have to live this way. We don't have to, be victims to this world, because we're the creators, after all. And and I think that a lot of times people get stuck in this idea of like, okay, you just follow the typical steps. You go to college, so you create all this debt. Now you have to get a job out of college, but now you have to pay off all this debt, so you don't have the flexibility to travel. You don't have the flexibility to maybe choose a different job if you don't like what you're doing, and you're stuck, and that's it. And then you're stuck in this job, paying off this debt until you retire, and then you hope that that you have a couple. And that's why when Chris Christie in one of the debates said that, as life expectancy goes up, so should the retirement age. That fucking drove me crazy, because I'm like, people work their asses off their whole lives. If they get a couple extra years of health to enjoy it, then why not? I mean, why would you ruin that for them? It's just it drives me crazy. But that's I don't know how your experience is with cigars, but it seems like when you get
No, I think I'm with you. I think it's very relaxing, and I did not think of it as a meditation, but that is actually how I use it. I will actually go in my backyard and I'll sit there. Some of these things take a better part of an hour to smoke, and you're sitting there just kind of thinking through. So I think that's a very good way of describing it. So, I find it very relaxing, and I think it's something I've come to depend upon to kind of de-stress. And obviously, I have a very stressful life, so
absolutely, yeah.
it is something that I actually do. Now, speaking, not to get too far off a field, but I agree with you also on the tax thing. I don't know if you've probably noticed this because you think things through. I don't understand the need for us to be taxed at all, since the government seems to be willing to print money as much as it wants whenever it wants it. So it's kind of like when they're right now, the IRS has had record hauls of loot, and I put it that way because I consider the IRS a criminal organization, and I'm sure they're going to be, it is what it is, and they have record hauls. Yet somehow we're spending twice as much as we take in. And to think that we have $19 trillion right now, $9 trillion up from when President Obama came in, is completely irresponsible by both sides. So you have record amounts of income coming in, yet you can't live within it. What does that tell you? And one of my criticisms is the Pentagon and some other things, like we're spending as much money right now. We have more people, on watch now than we did during the Cold War. Really? How's that even possible? We won the war, and yet we're doing, what? We're expanding constantly. And it's like both candidates. I represented both candidates saying we just need to blindly increase spending. Donald Trump would never allow a job site manager to come to him and say, boss, I don't know what I need. I just want more money. He would never do that. He just bragged about the fact that his Washington, D.C. hotel, the old post office, opened ahead of time under budget. But he would never have approved the job site guy coming to him and say, well, hey, boss, I don't know what I need. I don't know if it'll be effective, but could you give me another, $2 million just to have? And so it's insane that both candidates sign up to this idea that spending more on defense is somehow going to make us safer. So there's some things I think we have to take a hard look at regarding taxation. Why do we pay taxes at all if the government's going to print as much as we give them? And what's going to be the ultimate effect on our children and the fabric of the debt structure that we're now obligated to pay? It just boggles the mind that no one's, again, we've talked about foreign policy, people not thinking things through. The same thing can be said of domestic policy, where people don't think about the third and fourth order effects of bad decisions now. It's totally insane.
Well, I've had Jesse Ventura on, and he's made he's proposed the idea of having a flat tax and get removing the income tax, and I completely agree, because the way I look at it is that if there's somebody living paycheck to paycheck, why are you ripping money out of their check that is crucial to feed their family or to pay their bills or whatnot? And then if they can't do that, then of course it gets subsidized to the rest of the taxpayers, because now they're on government programs or whatever. Right. Why not just focus on a sales tax? Because if you could afford to buy something, you should probably be able to afford to tax them for it.
I agree. I think that's a workable system by the fact you're basically taxing action. If things are happening, the more actions. And this is where the politicians then would want to stimulate more actions, more active economy, because the more active the economy is, the more money the Treasury takes in. The other thing that's good about this, and I agree with Jesse, is that you can actually do a point of sale accumulation of taxes. That is to say that you don't have the IRS, this huge monolithic organization, having to go out and knock on people's doors. It just happens anytime you have a transaction. And yeah, there's ways of conducting fraud, and you're going to have to investigate some of that, but it's nowhere near the fraud that other people can see, where you have businesses hiding money offshore. You can't hide money offshore if you're doing transactions here where you're buying and selling stuff. So I think it's a much better formula. And then if you really want to help the poor then get a rebate at the end of the year saying, okay, you basically keep track of what you've purchased. You compare what you purchased to your income, and then the IRS can maybe send you some money saying, okay, here's some money back because you didn't make a certain amount. But it's much more positive. And the other thing, I don't think people understand, I have to pay my own taxes because I don't have payroll deduction. I don't think people understand how much they're actually paying in taxes, because it gets hidden within this W-2 and the paycheck every month, and you get immune to even recognizing how much money the federal government takes away from you. And so if people recognize that, I think they'd be a lot more up in arms about how much they actually do give the federal government and how it wastes it. So
yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think it was right when Obama, or soon after Obama became president the first time, that I think taxes went up a little bit, and everybody kind of immediately noticed it. And people were like, oh, I'm bringing home less than my paycheck, this and that. And then, like you said, soon after that, you kind of just got used to it. And then you stop looking at how much you're getting taxed. And then you just kind of look at, okay, what am I bringing home? And then you're just like, okay, why even pay attention to the money that I'm not getting, And so, yeah, it's a flawed system. I think that if you can afford to buy a yacht, then paying sales tax on it is fine,
Right.
And that way, like you said, the people who can, and if you're making more money, I mean, we are unfortunately in a materialistic consumer society where if you can afford to, if you're making good money, you're going to buy stuff, and if you can afford to buy stuff, you can afford to pay the taxes on it. So, and then people who can't aren't also getting raped by the government with taxes. So it makes, and people would get a little bit more money at home. So if you are living paycheck to paycheck, it would, I mean, even that little bit of money would go a long way, And I mean, look at when gas prices went up. I mean, just that a little extra money in your paycheck would have helped just to pay for your traveling, your commuting. So.
Well, the other alternative to this is what I call the 10th Amendment concept, where basically I think individuals have I've fought the IRS, and I'm still fighting them on stuff, and I think the little guy doesn't have a chance to stand up against a big organization like the IRS. So my idea is let the states, each state under the 10th Amendment, become the collector of all federal income. Let them say enough's enough, because the states have their own incentive to keep as much money in the state as possible. So thereby, if you then allow the state to become the repository of all taxation, that is to say that let them, the state gets to take a certain percentage, but then again, they need to be the ones defending their own citizens against this federal behemoth. So I'm thinking, you can if you're going to have an income tax, take it away from the federal government so they cannot simply demand upon the individual or the corporation this whatever they want, whatever they deem fit, and give it to the states. Let the states be the ones who basically amalgamate the income, and then they pay it to the federal government, because I don't think the states are going to want to be paying all this money to the federal government. I think it would allow for better oversight and a reduction of the momentum of the federal Leviathan simply, taking from the American people. I think it actually puts a logical break in there, a bulwark, if you will, to actually slow down. And again, I think the states would be a lot better. It's like, hey, we want to have more for ourselves. And I think that keeping as much income at the local level as possible both increases the accountability for how it's spent, as well as, again, getting it off the little guy who has to pay all the money.
Yeah, no, I live in Massachusetts, and they recently, and I think it starts actually today. Actually, we're getting rid of all toll booths, for our Mass Pike. And now they set up these cameras that will take pictures of your license plate, and then they'll you have to basically get an easy pass. And if you don't have an easy pass, then they'll take a picture of the license plate, send you a bill, and you get charged more if you don't have an easy pass. So everybody from out of state, right, who doesn't have an easy pass because they don't live in Massachusetts, so it's pointless to set one up just for maybe traveling through the state, they're going to be charged more. And it's just like, it's just completely okay. And the tolls just went up. I think last year they went up quite a bit, and they just laid everybody off. So they laid off, they're going to lay off everybody who've been working these tolls, and the toll prices went up. And now there's some argument, some debate about, are these cameras going to be able to hold our information for, if they can hold it for a certain period of time. And it's just like, at some point, because the way it's going to work now is they remove the tolls. So now as you get close to a toll, it'll take a picture, and it'll see how far you traveled, because it'll take a picture as you go past the toll, so it knows, okay, you went from toll 6 to toll 7, this is how much we'll charge you. And but they'll also keep track, from knowing how fast you got to one toll to another, your speed limit. And I'm thinking to myself, is it just a matter of time before they decide that, hey, of course for the better good of society, we'll just send people tickets if they speed, and we'll keep track of how fast you're getting from one exit to another.
Well, that's always danger. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, that's where Virginia's been pretty good about this. Not as good as it could be. But no, I think that any surveillance by a government state is illegal. You should not be able to do that. I mean, the idea here is that when you're moving around as a free citizen, you should be free. And the idea that your government is tracking you because of so-called safety is completely insane. There's nothing safe about that. It's an income center. And anybody who's rational will see that what they're doing there is simply trying to increase the oppression and increase the control. It has nothing to do with safety. It has nothing to do with anything that benefits the public. It's all about the government benefiting from basically being able to harass you. Basically, you're going to have to pay them to make them go away. Here's your $500 to let me go on a road I pay taxes to be able to go on. It's completely insane.
Yeah, and the other thing people never think about is, so even if, because then I feel like the government does a great job of making you feel guilty. Like, hey, you know what? You pay taxes because it's for the common good of society. You're helping for schools and roads and all this bullshit. Well, we have a state-run highway, the Mass Pike, which we have to pay for. So if that was a privately owned highway, we also would have to pay for it. So what benefit do we have of it being state-run besides the fact that instead of a private company who maybe could compete with somebody else and maybe lower the tolls because people would complain and you want to keep the customers happy, and we'll be like, we're going to boycott your highway, we're going to go use another route to work because we don't, and then they would try to keep the customers. Well, the state they have no competition, they have no incentive to keep us happy. So if they raise the tolls and we complain, they don't care. They'll just be like, well, it is what it is. We need it because it's going to go towards schools or going to do whatever. I think in Massachusetts when they sold the idea of the lottery, like that was supposed to fix all the bridges or whatever it was supposed to fix, it never did. And so we keep getting. And you were being in the Army, and I'm sure you saw it firsthand with Blackwater, with Hollenburn, KBR. All these subcontractors that were doing jobs that were historically mostly military jobs, and they were getting charging the U.S. much more than they would have it would have been to pay a military branch to do it, and all these private contractors make so much money. There's a great documentary called Iraq for Sale, and it really breaks down just how recklessly we spend money there. There's also an episode I remember of American Greed, which is a show. I think it's on MSNBC sometimes. I don't usually
narrate it.
Yeah. I've every once in a while I'll catch an episode. I remember this one episode where these two sisters had a company that send things overseas for the military, and they accidentally didn't put the decimal point, and then there's 2 extra zeros, and the government just paid it, and then they kept doing that. They're like, well, let's try this again. And then they tried it again. And the government was just paying these ridiculous fees, these ridiculous invoices, without ever questioning, like, hey, this is taxpayers' money. Maybe we should try to find the cheapest way of doing this, or the cheapest company doing it.
I agree. When I was in Afghanistan, I was when I was a private, I actually did something called KP, Kitchen Patrol. And that would be going in, serving meal to the troops, and helping the cooks clean up afterwards. And that was free because I was enlisted, it was my labor being applied in a certain way. I didn't like it, but I did it. And in Afghanistan, a cook with similar duties was drawing and this is the lowest opening salary, was they were getting $65,000 to do the task I just mentioned. $65,000. And again, that's the low end. And then when you think about the fact that if a person's making 65, you have to multiply that by 3 by the fact the corporation is charging the government 3 times that for the butt in the position. So, and multiply that by literally an order of magnitude of all these people doing this stuff. So yeah, you have huge corruption. And I've never thought for a minute that, again, throwing money at a situation is going to make it better. So I was one who watched this this migration of commercialism into the military, where with fascination I watched jobs which used to have privates who, by the way, NCOs sergeants miss having this capability, because for minor transgressions, that is, say, if you want to punish someone without getting them in trouble, you give them KP. It's a way of punishing someone to get their attention before you have to take some official action to ruin their lives by some sort of a criminal thing or administrative thing. So it's actually something that was very usable for purposes of building character. I'll put it that way. We don't do that now. So it's all these stupid things that we thought we could buy and sell and this and the other has made it far worse. It's not been to benefiting the military in any way I can see. And plus, if we really did go to war, these people would be the first ones to get killed because they're not soldiers. So, if we actually had a land war against the Russians, we would not do well. So it's one of those things I think we've not thought through.
And then look at the links between some of the, the Lockheed Martin people and the neocons, or the people who are making policy and these big corporations. I mean, and then you hear stories about how there'll be, tons of tanks that haven't been used, and then we'll order more, and this is taxpayers' money. I mean, This is the thing. This is why people need to be outraged about this stuff, because you look at the top 10 countries that spend in military defense, we're number one. The next 9 combined, and this is with world powers like Russia and China, don't equal the U.S. Right. Now, obviously spending all that money, it hasn't prevented terrorist attacks, prevent. I mean, what has it prevented? Not much. So, I think Russia. People are so afraid of Russia. I think they have like 2 bases or something like that outside of their area, and we have bases, 100 and something, bases all over the world. And it's like, is that all necessary? Like, are we really focusing on defense? It's almost like, we're telling people that we're teaching you karate, but it's really MMA, it's UFC. It's like karate. It's not self-defense. No, it's a great point. I was
actually over at Stimson Center yesterday talking about this very issue. We're actually going to try to do jointly sponsor between them and the London Center, an event this spring called Plan Orange versus Squeeze the Orange. Plan Orange being the plan developed during between World War I and World War II, which actually was the plan used to defeat the Japanese. And if you recall, before World War II, we did not have a large standing military. We were able to ramp up pretty fast based on the fact that we had plans. We kind of said, if this, then this. If that, then that. We actually kind of understood what was going to be required. We won the war in 4.5, 5 years? And we started with nothing. We basically started with a World War II depleted military that was not all ready to go. So I would argue, while I don't think we should go to the level that we were between World War I and World War II regarding our military capabilities, we surely don't need the capability. We can't be everywhere all the time constantly. So I think we have to relook, and I'm part of the group looking at what is our strategy exactly. As you point out, okay, we've had some major failures, and yet spending money didn't seem to mitigate those failures. So what are we doing wrong? And so this is one of the things I think we have to take a hard look at under whichever administration comes in is what is going to be the defense strategy, the global strategy, and how do we then justify paying for it? Because we cannot be everything to all people. I had a conversation with folks about NATO. Look, I agree with Donald Trump. We can't simply continue to say we're going to defend the Europeans and pay the cost for it. They got to pick up a lot of their own costs if they're going to be in the game. So
yeah, the U.S. is that guy everybody wants to go to dinner with because he takes a tab. It's funny. It's so true. But I mean, the thing is too is that I'm not sure we even it's a policy is always going to be influenced by the lobbyists who are working for these military or these military weapon companies and tank companies and bomb and airplane companies. I mean, how do we stop that? How do you? I mean, when it looks like, because I mean the way you're looking at it is that in a world where you could just look at things logically and be like, well, how do we prevent spending this money, this and that? But if the people making the decisions are influenced by lobbyists who are, how do you stop that?
It's an excellent question, and I'm not sure if there's actually, President Eisenhower warned us of the military-industrial congressional complex, and so many congressmen are influenced greatly by the lobbyists and that money coming out of these contractors. And one of my dear friends who's fought this for the last few years, I think most of his career, has been Congressman Walter Jones. Walter and I have had a number of conversations about this, and he's on the Defense Committee. He's on the Armed Services. And he recognizes this. We've talked about this, and it's not an easy thing to solve. I think it's one of those things where perhaps term limits is something to consider. Perhaps there are things to restrict a congressman's ability to take certain money from certain sources. I think there's some things that have to be examined regarding restrictions on this, because simply put, people are predisposed to continue the bad habits we currently see. And I think this is something we should look at definitely in the future. as a conservative, I think we're obligated to actually look at how to use the public's money more reasonably. It seems to be a blind spot for conservatives to think that somehow just spending more money on defense stuff makes us safer, and it simply does not.
Yeah, I think we really do need to reconsider that. But I know you're a busy man, so I don't want to take too much of your time, and I want to give you some time to maybe smoke a cigar this weekend. So I want to hold you up too long. I actually wanted to talk about your book and the whole 9/11 thing, but I'll definitely
let's do that next time.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that next time. And I have a habit of if a conversation goes somewhere, I don't like to stop it, because it's like it might lead down a road of a really interesting conversation I didn't anticipate for it. So I like to kind of just go wherever the conversation takes me.
Well, I hope this was kind of stream of consciousness, but I enjoyed it, so I hope you did.
Yeah, no, I love these. I mean, obviously, anytime you have somebody who is as knowledgeable as you've traveled all over the world, you've testified in front of Congress on some very important issues we'll get into next time you're on. And
sure.
So it's and if you're ever in Massachusetts, let me know. We'll smoke a cigar and get some bourbon.
Well, I'll definitely do that. I love cigars, and I never turn down a free cigar. So I don't know when I'm going to be up there. I mean, I've been up there forever, but Boston is one of those places I've always wanted to spend more time exploring. So I have some friends who keep encouraging me to come up, and I'll definitely let you know if I do. So
yeah, it's a fun city. It's one of the safest. Well, obviously it has some bad areas, but you can go out and it's just a bunch of drunk Irish and Italian kids, just having a good time. So it's a really fun city. People are
I'll date myself. One of my favorite shows from a few years ago was Spencer for Hire. And it was filmed right there in Boston, and I was a big fan of that whole series, the Robert B. Parker Spencer series. So I was a big fan of that in my youth. So
well, Boston's one of those cities where people who live there, a lot of them grew up there. So I go to Celtics games. I go to I sometimes we just go out to Boston, because I live right outside of Springfield, Mass, where the Basketball Hall of Fame is. This town called Ludlow, a big Portuguese community town. And Portuguese and Polish, actually. And when you go to Boston, you always end up making friends. You go out to a pizzeria, or you go to a restaurant, you go to wherever, and people talk to you like you know them, and it just has this, even though it's a big city, it has that like kind of small town feel, because I think a lot of people grew up there. And so it is a really, really fun city. And I'm not just saying that because, I was raised in Massachusetts. I've been to many other cities, and it's, there's that aspect of it's really, really cool. Even though I love the South, too. I went to New Orleans this year for the first time, and absolutely loved it. I loved how friendly people were down there. The food, I didn't even mind the heat. I definitely didn't even mind the heat. So it was really cool. So the cool thing about America is that, and even from you, somebody who travels a lot, I would always go to Europe, and people would be like, oh, I wish I could go to Europe. I never left the States, this and that. And I would tell people, like, listen, I've been to Europe, but honestly, even America has some really cool cities that you need to discover,
Right.
And yeah, so I think people kind of take that for granted too, all the cool locations, and actually we also have some culture here. I mean, in different parts of the U.S. So I think people can't, have to reconsider, hey, when I'm planning a vacation, maybe there's some cool cities in the States that I haven't been to that I should kind of explore and check out. So,
well, very cool.
Hey, thanks so much.
We'll have to get into we'll get into Operation Dark Heart and some of the 9/11 stuff, and there's a lot to talk about that. Walter Jones finally got the 28 pages released regarding the Saudi involvement, so that's a good topic to talk about as well. So a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, I'll keep in contact, have you on,
sure.
To see how your schedule looks, and we'll have you on again, and we'll talk about that. And I mean, we made an hour go by pretty quick.
Pretty quick, it went fast.
Hey, thanks, I really appreciate it, and I'll talk to you soon.
Talking to you.
Yeah,
take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Believe in the ripple effect.